So ever since getting into being a full-time artist, I have been trying to basically improve some type of skill every month, or at least try to explore something every month to do something I'm uncomfortable with. I've been getting this feeling of like not feeling like my art is good enough, or like kind of nitpicking what I do a lot more. And someone told me a long time ago that when you feel that feeling, it's when you're ready for kind of like a level up in your art. So I wanted to challenge myself today and explore something I'm not really good at and try really hard to do it to like the best of my ability. So I think a lot of us have a similar appreciation for amazingly rendered food in like movies and anime. I always think about how good the Ghibli food looks. Like every movie has fantastic looking food, and then so many anime have these like amazingly rendered bits of food, and I'm like, oh my God, I love how that looks. And I've never really tried it to that extent. Like I've tried here and there, but I've never really been good at it. In college, I mean, I'll just say it, I was pretty lazy with it. I was very focused on like, I'm gonna be a mangaka, and that's all I wanted to do. So I never really pushed myself in like the life studies or like still lifes or different like studying something that's real outside of like animals and people. I didn't really do any of the other stuff. And I think my art is suffering for it nowadays because I can't really do backgrounds, I can't do food. And so I'm like, let's start practicing. So today I want to dive into doing some food studies, and specifically I want to make them fun. And one way to make studies fun is to incorporate it into something that you love. So for me, I'm working on my comic Fox Among Hounds, and I am very passionate about the food of every culture that is in that world. And so I'm like, why don't I make the dishes for the different nations and make different videos out of it so I can keep practicing painting food? But then it's fun for me because I'm developing stuff for my comic as well. It's kind of like when people practice anatomy and they just draw their favorite characters from shows. It just makes it feel like way more fun to do. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to start with the Fox Nation, which is the nation of my main character, Ina. And we're going to basically explore a couple of different dishes that she would probably eat or make, or like the people of that culture would make. So I think I'm going to do 4 different food items to start per culture, and I want them to be finished plates of food because I did previously do like a, I guess, agricultural breakdown of what these cultures would like grow and harvest and eat, which I'll put right here as well. This was like my first initial draft of like the cultural food from the Fox Nation. So with keeping those in mind, I want to expand on it and make the finished dishes that could come from these different foods that they would have. So let's jump in, get some sketches going, and let's challenge ourselves and try to draw some food. So our first food for our little lineup, I went with what I thought was going to be the easiest, which is pies. It ended up kind of being the easiest, so it was a good starting point. So within the Fox region, they have a lot of different fruits and vegetables, and so I was like, I feel pies is just perfect for like the different fruits that they can grow there. Quite a few of them grow naturally, some of them that they like cultivate on their own as well. But I just thought it would be just so perfect and fitting for this. Plus, like, I mean, I love pie. Who doesn't like pie? So I thought it would be cute to do like little hand pies. So instead of like one large pie, it's lots of little ones. And I thought that'd be super cute. Plus, I would get to experiment with different internal pie colors and then also practice lots of different parts of the crust just on the overall pie design. So I was thinking this one would basically be, there would be like a blackberry pie, a strawberry pie, and a peach pie. So that's the 3 colors you're seeing. But in this realm, the strawberries are more in a purpley pink hue. Blackberries still look very similar to ours. And then they have something called like fire peaches, which are in those like pinkish colors as well. So yeah, those were the 3 internal fillings for the pies. So from here with like rendering these, I was trying to do kind of one pie at a time. It did bleed into each other with just how the brushes were set up. But I was like, okay, I need to look at a lot of reference. So I had a couple references up for people that painted pies so I could see maybe how they digitally or traditionally painted them. I had a few photos of actual pies and I was just kind of jumping between a lot of different reference as I was rendering these. I found a really nice paintbrush on Clip Studio for this, and I'm trying to remember what it is, but I think it's like the texture paintbrush under, I think it's one of the default wet brushes, I think they're called. It's either the wet brush or the one next to it on the tab. That worked great for the crust, and I did that for both the highlights and the shadows. And then I went through with just a hard G pen brush to add like the very distinct shadows and highlights. And then for the internal pie filling, I used more of a watercolor brush and altered it a little bit to have those different range and shades of the color. And then I did a combo of like the hard G pen brush and then some more of like airbrushing between these different colors. And I think they turned out pretty good. This was a good starting point. It was a good warm up because it wasn't too detailed, but it was detailed enough that I could maybe play around with different brushes and figure things out. So next up, I wanted to do some type of stew or soup. Like I said earlier, they have a lot of different vegetables, a lot of root vegetables like carrots and potatoes and different things like that. So I was like, I think some type of stew or like mix of something would work really well. And while I was doing research on like real food in like our world that is similar to the culture of the Fox Nation, I came across a thing called coddle, I think is how you pronounce it, but it's CODDLE. And it's kind of just a mix of like different things, and it's like boiled down. And I saw a few reference pictures that have it more stew-like and others that it's more like rendered down, so there's not as much broth. But yeah, it looked really perfect. It looked tasty. And so I thought this would be a great next one to use. And so within the Fox Nation, a lot of them ride elks instead of horses. But with that too, they are a major source of food as well. So for these, I was thinking the primary meat source in the stew would be an elk sausage. And then we would also have some onions, some potatoes, and then carrots. And within the Fox Nation, they have a specific carrot called the dragon horn carrot, which is like a purple to orange cued carrot. So that's why the ones in this coddle are purple, just as a heads up. I know in our world we also have purple carrots, but if I remember correctly, those purple carrots usually have like a white inside, if I remember correctly. So these ones, it like starts purple near where the leaves are, and then it transitions to orange towards the other end, and then the center running up this is also orange. So in terms of how I rendered this, the sausages, I used that textured brush that I did on the pies as well, but I added a little bit more of either harder highlights, and I used that watercolor brush and changed some of the parameters on it, I guess, the presets, and that helped a lot. And then with the vegetables, like the potatoes, I think I used more of like an oil paint brush or like a canvasy texture brush, because I wanted to give, I guess, more of the starchy speckling to it that a lot of potatoes have. And then the onions, they're kind of transparent once you cook them down. It looks like what's behind them. So I didn't want them to be too rendered. They kind of fade into the background of the soup. And then the carrots, I just kind of did a mix of different things. Like I did the watercolor brush and some hard highlights on it as well. And I really like how they turned out. I was very happy with all the rendering on this one. The references were super helpful. These ones I used all real photo references instead of painted references, but I still think it turned out really good. And then I used a random leaf brush to add like almost like parsley or some type of herb on top of this coddle combination. And I really like it. I was so pleased with this one and really happy with how it turned out. This was like a nice like medium difficulty one. Like I feel each one of these I'm slowly getting to a harder one as we continue. So next up, I wanted to do a like cured fish because like, especially with Ina being on the road and traveling, I think there would be certain foods that they would need to basically have something that's like road safe where they won't get sick by having it out too much, but you know, they need to have protein. So like they probably have like elk jerky and other things, but another thing they could have is like smoked or cured fish. So I was like, oh, that would be perfect. Plus, it's like a way for me to practice rendering fish, like the internal meaty bits, because it looks surprisingly easy. But when I started, I was like, oh man, it was really hard to get my head wrapped around it. Like, I was looking at photos and I was like, I think I can pull this off, but it was just like a very good challenge. And I'm like, I have to do fish. But yeah, mostly chose it because I feel it would be like a road safe travel thing, depending on if it's like cured in salt or if it was smoked. Usually those have a better like shelf life in general, and that's how a lot of ancient people were able to keep their food for so long, is they do different curing methods, so then it would be shelf stable for longer. So this one is, I call it like a ruby salmon, is the one that's common in the rivers in the Fox Nation. So they would probably cure it or smoke it or have it like freshly cooked, but if you're on the road, probably one of the two. And then I wanted a few more vegetables. So these ones I had like radishes and cucumbers, plus some like mustard seeds kind of strewn across it. And then I was thinking they could have some type of like, almost like a yogurt from, they have elk milk and they also have goats. Both of those are very common within the Fox Nation. So I thought they could use that to make some type of like, not like a yogurt base, but almost like a cream cheese-ish spread. The word for it is failing me, but that's kind of what I'm thinking is the base, is like some type of either like a cream cheese or like a softer spreadable cheese. That's what I was kind of picturing for this. And then basically the bread that it's on, I don't really see it as like hardtack, but maybe somewhere in between like a crunchier hardtacky biscuit and a bread. I was thinking it's a much more denser, more like wheat bread that doesn't like rise a ton. It's just a very dense bread, probably full of some pretty good nutrients and such. But that's kind of what I was picturing for this food in general. So with this one, I used the watercolor brush a lot, as well as the different like textured brushes that helped so much with the fish. Cause I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get this look for the fish. And I noticed like along the different segments of the fish, there was like almost like a white or pinkish haziness along like the ribs of the fish. I don't know if you call that ribs, but I was like, I need to keep that in mind with rendering. And I think noticing that detail really helped sell that this is fish. And even though it's cured, it still has kind of like a shininess to it when I was looking up reference images. So yeah, it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. It was a little bit more difficult. I had to do a lot more observation, but I think it turned out really good. And the vegetables were super fun to render. Okay, so the final one is a fried cabbage dish with some more root vegetables. These ones would be probably some parsnip type of root vegetable. And then I was thinking they would have like a meat with it. So this one is like kind of like a bacon, because I think they would have pigs too, if you ask me. And I think bacon and cabbage sounds pretty dang good. So for this one, I also wanted to try doing a bowl and a fork and try my skills at rendering wood. So I pulled up a couple different reference images of some wooden forks and bowls, so then I could like figure out how exactly I wanted to color this. So first I started off with a line art. With all of these, I started with a line art to at least get my thoughts down on the paper, as well as like it makes it a lot easier to drop in colors where they're supposed to go. And then I would recolor the line art to sell the food image a little bit more with all of these. So I started with the bowl and the fork, trying to figure that out. And then from here, it was onto the cabbage and parsnips and bacon. And if you asked me at the beginning of this study what I thought would be the hardest, I would have told you either the fish or the stew. But surprisingly, it was cabbage. That was so difficult. I went back and forth so many times on how to render it. I did forget to hit record a few times, so I apologize that we're missing a few things. But I didn't even think about how cabbage becomes semi-transparent when cooked, and my brain, it really struggled to figure out how to render that. So I was going back and forth later on, like between exactly how to render this cabbage. And with that too, it's like the cabbage leaves come in different colors. You have like the more internal leaves that are in the whiter greenish hue, and then like the external leaves that are in those like deeper or lighter greens. And so, oh God, it was so hard. It was so difficult. But first off, I'll just tell you about the bowl. I really enjoyed coloring the wooden bowl. I used another one of the preset paint brushes. I actually didn't really download any brushes for this. So everything I used comes with Clip Studio Paint. So if you want to try this, they're basically all there. So you just have to change a couple parameters, maybe mess with some settings. Like, for example, the watercolor brushes, I changed to, instead of multiply, I just changed them to normal and changed some densities, but that was about it. So you can always kind of experiment with it. So yeah, anyway, the cabbage. So the lighter pieces of cabbage I started with, and I loved how they turned out. But then when I started drawing the darker ones, I was really not jiving with it. I just wasn't liking it. And so the first leaf I wasn't really happy with, but then as I kept going and I tried again, I actually like deleted out the first few leaves and just started fresh. I'm like, I liked certain things I learned from the first and the second leaf, but I was like, I need to try again because it just wasn't working. So I pulled up even more references and tried to really look at how the colors change on the leaf. And I think that ended up paying off really well. I'm glad that I didn't just say like, oh, whatever, good enough. I redid it, I restarted, and I tried again. And that's what's been really great with these studies is I use, like most of the time when I'm making videos or trying to get art out quickly on the internet, there's a point where you have to just be like, it's good, let's go, let's release it. But I think I was getting to the point where I was rushing it too much and I was like stifling my ability to grow. And with these, I was having a lot of fun and I felt it was like a challenge that I had to overcome. Like I was reveling in the challenge of it. I was like, man, this is like really cool to see like, hey, I actually can just like pull it off. So I'm glad that I slowed down and tried it and like just kept reworking it. I still hate rendering cabbage, but now I know for the future what to do if I ever need to do cabbage or like lettuce. I feel like if it's not steamed or fried, it will be easier because it's not transparent. But either way, even though this was the hardest, I was very happy with how it turned out. And this was really fun to do. And there we have it. We are all done with these food studies. I found these extremely difficult, but also extremely rewarding. I feel painting and rendering food falls in the category of art where you hate it until the very end. Until you finally get all the textures together and colors together, you're like, okay, now it makes sense. So I'm really glad I did this. I had a lot of fun rendering the different foods and trying different things out. And I experimented with brushes I don't really use in Clip Studio Paint. And I found some that I really liked for these. So I'm a happy camper. I think this was a very solid first attempt. I have discovered some things that I want to improve on, but I think these are really good for me. I took my time. I looked at a bunch of photo reference and I didn't really rush through these like I have in the past. I'm like, I gotta just give this time to like let my brain learn, I guess. And I think it paid off. I think they look great and I hate rendering cabbage. Out of all of these, the cabbage was the worst, which was really surprising. So anyway, thank you guys so much for stopping by and checking out this video. I want to do more of these. We have multiple nations within the Fox Among Hounds universe. So if you like these, let me know down in the comments so I can like know if I should keep making videos of these. I love rendering food now. I never thought I would say that. So I would love to do more of these for the other nations and try it out, but let me know if you liked it too. Also, I want to do a shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys so much for supporting my art business and my art journey. If you would like to support me and the channel and get some goodies for yourself, go check out my Patreon. We have a monthly mail club where you can get prints and stickers and sticker sheets in the mail to you every month. It's a new theme every time. And yeah, like you guys help me make this a reality of being able to create content and make art all the time. So I really appreciate any support you can offer. With that too, a like, a follow, a comment, a share, any of that helps me as well. And I really appreciate you guys' support. But either way, thank you guys again so much for stopping by. I had so much fun doing these studies and I want to do more studies. I want to improve this year. That is my goal. Like I'm making my comic, I'm able to do art full time, and I need to keep doing these studies so then I can keep improving as an artist. So if you have other ideas for fun studies you want to see me do, let me know in the comments as well. But either way, thanks again, and I'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.